Welcome to week 2 of the challenge. We're about 2/3 of the way through special events and are due for a return trip to Red Rock Valley. You know why. I needed some extra financial security. Afterwards, I decided to take the Altezza and finish up Compact Car World Cup. Yeah, the Altezza is not really a compact, but it met the horsepower limit and it saved me from overspending on Jeff. And I have no remorse in selling the Volkswagen Lupo. Scouring the used car dealers and I struck gold on the Mazda lot, I found a yellow FA RX-7 ripe for the picking. This is our weapon of choice for the 80s Sports Car Cup. 5 races with the first one at Trial Mountain. What is it with RX-7s being so slippery? After winning, I needed to look into more tuning options. I'd probably get the turbo first, then the transmission second. I thought it was the suspension, but the RX-7 is practically bottomed out when reviewing the replay. The Mugen Civic Fario is sold and I buy all of the above. I tune the car's suspension and transmission and take it out for a test on the test course. Then I move over to Special Stage Route 5 and give the second race a try. The RX-7 still likes to fishtail in the corners, but I held on. I want to see if there's anything in T-Kanji's guide on what to do against oversteer. After selling one of the 2 CRX Pro 3s in the game, it was back to the test course to tweak the differential, after buying one, of course. But the only way to get true results was to take it for a test drive. After dialing in the diff to what I felt was acceptable, it was on to the real race. Turns out I had nothing to worry about despite my brain going on autopilot on lap 3. Selling the Mugen Civic Type R, I realize I may not have enough horsepower to deal with the last 2 races. The last turbo upgrade I can apply would push the RX-7 over the power limit. If only it knew how to use its horsepower. Wait, knows how to use its horsepower! Call it cheating or laziness, I call it being resourceful and saving money. I had been going by an unwritten rule to see how long I could complete races legitimately as the GT gods intended. But I technically broke it on day 1 with the Vits though, so all bets are off. Including at Tahiti Road. The Road GT40 eats anything below 400 horsepower for lunch. It's a homologation special that punches well above its own weight. I mean, it had to be a homologation special in order to race at Le Mans in the 60s, right? Anyway, I'm not concerned about how to get races done at this point, I'm more concerned about when I'm getting them done. But the Pennzoil Skyline keeps calling out to me, begging me to buy it. I'll get there, don't worry. And why do I always get the Silhouette Skyline in blue? Why can't I get it in the canonical red for once? Whatever, I still can't use it. I then decided to look up the racing modification colors to see what was worth buying. I stumbled across at least one monstrosity on a GT Planet forum post while searching for the right car to mod. See, here's the thing though, a lot of the liveries of the racing modifications are multicolored. It makes it hard for me to determine if a car's color is truly yellow. A livery might have yellow on it, but is there enough yellow on the body of the car to qualify it as actually being yellow? I'm thinking it would have to cover more than 55% of the car's body for me to consider it yellow. You know what? It's time to troll everyone again. For some reason, the Intrepid is considered a luxury sedan even though it's a piece of junk alongside its Stratus brother. But now was the time for Franken-trepid to terrorize the streets of Special Stage Route 5. Gotta say that the Intrepid's handling is not tepid, despite looking like a drag racing car. Did any Intrepid get offered with a V8 engine? I have to think it's got a V6 in there, despite using a V8 sound. After booting the TRD Chaser, we confirmed Franken-trepid was in fact using a V6 engine. The only way you're getting a V8 Intrepid is by LS swapping it. One last upgrade and Franken-trepid is ready to tackle high-speed Ring. While the other sedans were faster, they weren't that fast. Slow enough for me to take the lead, but fast enough to pose a threat if I screw up. Thankfully, I didn't screw up too hard, and Franken-trepid won us the 4-door R33 GTR Autech Nismo. In the correct color! Now that we were closing in on finishing the special events, it was time to close up shop for the night. I had a good idea of what to do next, and it involved racing against a bunch of sedans with a sedan. Just not with Franken-trepid. I mean, if all else fails, Franken-trepid will get more time in the spotlight. But now it's the 4-door GTR's turn. Unfortunately, we have to start at Apricot Hill. And now for another moment of appreciation, this time for the turbo release sound. And, how much horsepower do the other sedans have? The correct answer is, not enough! Despite the expected GTR understeer, the GTR sedan made short work of the grid. And remember, the prizes for Super Touring Car Trophy are random. This may not be the last time you see this TRD 3000 GT. After treating the R33 sedan to some new kicks, it was back to Trial Mountain. On lap 2, the GTR exposed its tail-happy tendencies brought on by not braking at high speed. But at least I didn't have to brake as much for the first sector. I played it safe on lap 3 and we took home the gold. And another TRD Supra. Get! Laguna Seca was no problem for the GTR, leaving the sedans to get tangled in the corkscrew once again. And seriously? 3 times? Ugh, Deep Forest and Sector 1 chews up all racing lines before they even happen. But the GTR breaks free once getting onto the canopy straight. Stop giving me TRD 3000 GTs, game! Now to finish off these sedans at Rome Circuit. I consider Rome to be a speed course because of all the long stretches of road with few corners. And all the game could muster for prize cars was the TRD 3000 GT? No Chevy Camaro, no Tom Supra, just the 3000 GT. And none of them come in yellow. I only have 10 more races to check off in special events, with all of Convertible Car World Cup, 2 races of Historic Car Trophy, and the GT500 Championship. I decided, f it, we ball, and finally bought the Pennzoil Skyline. It's GT500 time. I keep forgetting it's a rolling start. Ugh. Race 1, Laguna Seca. I love this course, and I also love the Pennzoil Skyline. Unlike the GTR sedan we fielded, there's almost no understeer to be had. It grips the twists, turns, and corkscrew like duct tape. Race 2, Super Speedway. I imagine if I were driving the Speed 12, I'd get close to lapping the other JGTC cars. The Pennzoil Skyline is fast, but not once could I breach 200 miles per hour. Race 3, Rome Circuit. I got in a bit of a tight squeeze at the start, but Forza strats, baby! After clearing the first couple of track sections, the GTR was gone. Race 4, Trial Mountain. I haven't seen this level of AI baloney since the Espace F1's attempt of Apricot Hill. The Denso Supra shoves me into the rock wall before the skyline gets twisted by the 300ZX GTS, forcing me to fight an uphill battle for lap 2. But because the skyline was faster, it caught up and retook the lead on the hard left before the chicane. Then, it was smooth sailing from there. Don't ever give up. Unless you're racing against a GT40 in Historic Car Trophy Race 2. Final race. Why? Well, on the bright side, Apricot Hill is the last race in the championship, so I don't have to race it again. For now. And no, I will not stop cutting the second to last corner. You can't stop me. The GT500 Championship is over, and I get a beefy 200,000 credit bonus, along with the CDMA 1 Tsurumo Supra. BAM! I made most of my money back from the Pennzoil GTR. With only 5 more races left in special events, I set off to Honda to buy the S2000 for Convertible Car World Cup. I couldn't tune the S2000 very much for the first race so as not to exceed the power limit, so I put it on some slicks, gave it a flywheel, and went to Tahiti Road. VTEC kicked in hard, but then again I was racing against lightly tuned Miatas and Cappuccinos. Victory was never in doubt. What was in doubt was the prize car I won, the A-Spec Miata. Time to tune the S2000 up for race 2 at Grindelwald. For a moment I forgot that the Lotus Elise was considered a convertible. I mean, I know some of them were, but the model used for GT2 isn't clear on whether or not it's convertible. I think it has a removable roof. The Elise is the hardest opponent in the pool of convertibles, but not for the S2000. And wave goodbye to the Toyota MRS concept car. For the last race, I splurged on the TVR Griffith 500, saving money over its Blackpool variant, which had less power for more money. At Trial Mountain, the Mini Demon exhibited wheel spins similar to that of the Speed 12 in first gear. I needed to remind myself not to mash the gas when exiting a turn and ease into it. Now, can I be the first to say I like how the Griffith sounds? It doesn't sound like its sibling who had a bad smoking habit. And for clearing out Convertible Car World Cup, we got the Dodge Concept Car LM Edition. Oh, well, easy come, easy go. To close out Historic Car Trophy, it was time to deal with semantics again and buy the Lancia Delta. Ah, oh, damn it, I forgot to buy wheels for it. Oh well, there's always next race. Starting the race, what's that car next to me? I don't think I've ever seen that car in the game. Turns out it's the Subaru 360, which fared even worse than the Fiat 500R. Glad I'll never touch that beginner's trap. While the Delta won't be rocking the Martini livery this time, it'll still have monster grip. And looky here, it's the second appearance of the CRX Pro 3. Alright, who's ready for he's there / he's not there? Let's go! First try! You know, I briefly considered buying the Lotus Elan for the race, and you know what? I'm glad I didn't. I can only imagine how much the car would roll, but a Toyota 2000 GT taunted me, laughing at me for being poor on day one. But the joke's on you, I say to the Toyota, for the cycle is about to begin anew. And we have to bid farewell to the Lotus Europa since it does not come in yellow. Special events are done! The Gran Turismo League is next, and I need to evaluate my garage to determine what to drive for each race. But I was more than happy to rest for the night and prepare to finish the game the next day. Alright, it's time to hunker down and finish the job. For Gran Turismo League, I'm taking a staggered approach to this, since there is one car I can use for races with the lowest power limit, the Tom's T111. This modified AE111 Toyota Corolla may not be as fondly remembered as the AE86, but I know potential when I see it. It just needs a bit of tuning to get there. My plan of attack was to finish the first races of Japan, UK, and Italian nationals with small upgrades, then upgrade for the first race of German nationals. I know I'm going out of order, but it makes it easier to keep track of this car for races. Speaking of easy, the T111 had no problem dealing with the Vitzes and the AZ1s, save for a hint of understeer and a sluggish launch. The Nationals give out no prize cars, but the cash will help me save for the car's next upgrades for German Nationals Race 1. UK Nationals had me dealing with a slew of Lotus Elans, MGFs, and a lone Mini Cooper in Twitch Band Purple. Despite holding a solid lead, the other cars didn't make it a comfortable lead. But a win is still a win at the end of the day. And I just love the replay camera angle that crests a hill when it shows the opponents not too far behind. It's like that one scene at the start of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Right, on to Rome. The entire grid is Fiats and Alphas, nary a Lancia in sight. I suppose I'll find one on the full Rome circuit other than my own. But now it's upgrade time for the T111. I find it funny that a large car like the Mercedes-Benz CLK is pitted against an Opel Astra and a Volkswagen New Beetle, but it's a sad reminder of the time when GT2 came out. And I could not get myself to buy the Sunburst Yellow Miata after the used car cycle refresh, since one was no longer needed. It was the Delta's turn to go around the GT League. A Honda S2000 was less than a second behind me throughout the race at midfield, making the margin for error tight. Nonetheless, the grippy Delta persevered. After winning, I realized I missed a step that I had written down elsewhere, suggesting I'd upgrade the T111 further for the races with 246 horsepower. So I did that and sent it back for another round of Nationals. I can understand why the AE111 doesn't get as much love as the AE86 that preceded it, but I'll be damned if this ain't a solid front-wheel drive sports car. Then again, we also didn't get it here in the US, and we haven't had a two-door Corolla since. We can't have nice things. Also, Ford Ka, Back to where every GT2 run starts, Tahiti Road, the site of many a rubber band and a super bonbon. Hey, it's a yellow Peugeot 106! High-speed tracks like Tahiti Road really allow front-wheel drive understeer to rear its ugly head. I can see why you don't want to put a lot of power into a front-wheel drive car and why the Chevy Impala SS from the late 2000s doesn't have that much horsepower. Okay, T111, you did your job well. It's time to tag the Delta back in. I love racing at Laguna Seca, if I haven't made it clear already. The Delta has a bit more understeer than I remember, but overall grip is still phenomenal. Maybe even too good with the super soft slicks. And now for a lovely cruise set to the blue skies, azure waters, and bright green 2D palm trees of Tahiti Road. Which probably isn't actually set within Tahiti. I have a better time believing that Tahiti Maize and Tahiti Dirt are actually set in Tahiti. We're not getting to those because Rally is not on the menu. Okay, good news. There was another Lancia in the other Italian national race. Bad news is it was the same make and model as what I have. Did you really expect to see a Stratos or a Y? Or would that be Ypsilon? Whatever the case, the Delta won its races. It was time to tag in our next car, which is the nigh unstoppable Ford GT40 road car. Anything between 300 to 400 horsepower would be no match for the GT40. My assumption was correct at midfield because when the car got traction at the start of the race, it absolutely hauled ass. It was gone. Same story at Trial Mountain. The GT40 isn't even in the same galaxy as cars like the Motorsport Elise. Oh, wait, we missed a spot. Time to ride the Delta off into the sunset once again. To complete the Nationals, I summoned the Cerberus because the Griffith was out of commission. Not only did I not want to risk using the GT40 against cars with more horsepower, but I also didn't want to show the same 2 or 3 cars over and over. Variety is the spice of life. Over to Trial Mountain and the poor Aston Martin DB6 gets left behind.
Who's not gonna like this?
But the pair of TVRs stayed hot on my tail and made me uneasy. They didn't pass me though, and I still won. With one race to go, I went from one TVR to another. The ketchup and mustard Tuscan Speed 6 was off to deep forest. If the Tuscan could sprout wings, it would fly off into the sunset with how quick it was. Only to die in a blaze of glory. Nationals are done, so now it's time to dust off the RERX-7 for Euro Pacific. However, we start at Apricot Hill again. It was no contest. Shocker. A pre-Super GT car was much faster than Grand Touring cars. Never not cutting. Unless there's another JGTC car that's yellow as a prize, I have to sell it, which, if memory serves me right, there isn't. There is the iconic Castrol Supra, but it has to go. A million Super GT fans cried out in despair. Next, the Matsukiyo and its turboed rotary went to sing its timeless chorus at Grand Valley. I've always been fascinated by the rotary engine. With enough rotors, the engine can scream as loud as an F1 car. Even though I'll never own a car with a rotary, I love seeing them. Wave bye-bye to the Zexal R33 Skyline. Onto the penultimate Rome circuit race. When in Rome, I kept thinking about JGTC and Super GT, wondering if watching any of those races would be interesting. Thing is, I don't think I could sit down for more than 2 hours watching a race because of my short attention span combined with my ADHD. And then I was brought back to reality on the final 2 corners because I biffed a turn and got spun. I really need to stop thinking hard about things while in Rome. And saying when in Rome. Can someone let me know if Super GT is worth watching when this is done? And can someone tell me the correct pronunciation of this R33? Pacific League is next, with the lower power limit being meaningless to the Matsukiyo. The Vipers, Mustangs, NSXs, Supras, and the like were humbled by the RX-7. They're fast cars, don't get me wrong, but real race cars have great power to weight ratios since they don't need creature comforts like air conditioning or passenger seats. And away goes the 300ZX GTS. We never forget. The Matsukiyo got a little feisty in Seattle with all the elevation changes. Did it borrow tires from the Banana Peel RX-7 I got earlier in the game? I'm the king of Alaskan Way! Oh hey, speaking of RX-7s, final race of Pacific League at Laguna Seca. Another walk in the park. I wish there was a Dodge Viper in yellow in this game. They were yellow in Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 just 3 years later. And our second to last prize car is none other than the Drag 180SX. The fact that I still can't use it is a disappointment. What? What else did you think I was gonna say? And now, the GT World League is all that remains. My track weapon of choice is going to be the Pennzoil GTR. I would have picked the Speed 12 as my first choice, but it's too powerful for its own good. 5 races, 5 laps apiece, no power limit. Let's go. Starting at Trial Mountain. Right away I can tell that the Screamin' Calibra is in the grid because that thing goes when revving up. That thing revs over 10,000 RPM, but it was too slow for cars like the GT1 and the Pennzoil GTR. It may have had all-wheel drive, but the Skyline did too and had more power. I felt good winning the race, but I needed to temper my expectations since race 3 is Apricot Hill. We know how that went with the Espasa F1. It's Laguna Seca for what may be the last time this playthrough. Another easy win for Yellow Car! Also, who got chewed up by the corkscrew this time on lap 2? The Lotus. 2 full rotations combined with an airwalk over the escalator. Oh boy, now it's Apricot Hill. The launch was extremely important since being behind any other car was a recipe for disaster. Thankfully, the Pennzoil Skyline has the launch of a rocket and prevented disaster before it could ever happen. Never not cutting! I cut this track more than I cut apricots, which is to say I've never cut an apricot. The worst is over. I'm in control from here on out. And now for the final time I race in Rome. But how can you be in control when you're not? I screw up a turn and get spun out, but recover in time to avoid being passed by the GT1. I didn't even say when in Rome! It's almost over now. The last race is at midfield. I don't even think I need to say anything. Well, I do, but I'll save that for the victory lap. That is, if I do finish first. I do. I like the Pennzoil GTR after seeing it on the back of the Gran Turismo 3 box, but spending the final part of the game with it, I love it. But do I love it more than something like the Castrol Supra or the Calsonic R33? Maybe not. But it belongs up there with those JGTC cars. I might even consider it to be in the top 3. But the run is finally finished. After collecting our shiny trophy and 150,000 credit bonus, we end off with the requisite message and the car of GT fans' dreams. The 1998 Toyota GT1. A thing of beauty. However, rules are still rules. This challenge spurred from something I was doing for fun in my last run and reading a tongue-in-cheek comment. But I was more than happy to try it out since there's a lot of cars in this game. Experimenting with a fairly monochromatic garage was a fun twist to a racing game I loved as a kid. I got to know this game even more than the last few times I played it, getting into the nitty-gritty of its features, mechanics, and technical quirks. To me, Gran Turismo feels like an ode to cars. And with Gran Turismo 2, it also feels like an ode to the best cars of the 1990s. They're the kind of cars that have imprinted deeply into the psyche of car lovers of my generation. But just like what I said in the beginning, nothing stands out quite like the color yellow. Oh, and one more car for good measure. Thanks for watching.
Yellow car!